Good evening, and I would like to call this meeting to order for the Urban Renewal Agency and Urban Renewal Advisory Commission. Can we get a roll call?
Justin Rock.
Here.
David Glabe.
Here.
Corinne Dudo.
Here.
Nicole Howard is absent excused. Molly King.
Here.
Marianne Miesner.
Here.
Denise Wheeler.
Here.
Lauren Babcock is absent excused. Elena Corollo.
Here.
Ricky Joe Hickey is absent excused. Roxy Ogilvy.
Here.
Matt Scarfo.
Perfect. Is there any changes to the agenda? With that, towards the end of the meeting, is that when we're going to have the special?
This is the special session.
I'm a
This is the special session.
little special tonight. All right, with that, we will move on. There will be no public comment during this meeting. During the regular session, when the public comment will be for?
If people would like to make comments about this, they could do those at the next Urban Renewal regular session.
And new business, we will turn this over to Timothy.
Before we do that, Mayor, does anyone have a conflict of interest where you or a family member has a financial interest in any of the projects? No. There are none? Now, Timothy can go.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So thank you all for joining us this evening. We have a relatively short agenda tonight. We have 6 projects that we're able to apply for, call for projects this year. Am I getting an echo?
Yeah, you got
One without the lipstick.
Yeah, Brent, we got an echo.
The voice of God. Is that better if I just lower the mic? Or am I still echoey?
It's okay, pretty good.
Okay, we're pretty good then. So tonight's agenda, we'll go through a staff report on each of the 6 projects that applied for call for projects. We'll do a staff report on each of those, and we'll have time for questions. You can either, at your discretion, if you have a question in the middle of a staff report, just ask on that project, or we will have time at the end. You all do have your scoring sheets. So in your staff report, we will report out the staff score, but you each, as members of the agency and the advisory committee, have 65 points available to score at your discretion for any project. Once we've done staff reports and answered questions, we'll take a short break. During that break, the agency and UREC can discuss the presentations, finalize your scoring. We'll then reconvene, and the agency and UREC will review and rank the final scoring, followed by a vote on project funding. So a couple of quick notes. So the process for the 2024 call for projects, we opened call for projects on March 4th. Applications were accepted through May 24th, so roughly 2 months. We received 7 applications. 6 of them were viable applications. We had one that just was not competitive. The application was incomplete, partially significantly done prior to receipt of the application, and just didn't meet the criteria. So we have 6 that we're able to move forward. Those are in your packet. We evaluated those and scored those at the staff level. I think you'll see that we have a pretty diverse group of projects this year. We have everything from new construction, which I think is the first time, at least since I've been here, we have new construction in the call for projects, and we have a pretty good geographic representation of the district as well. Packets were made available to the agency on June 20th. We had a week to return any questions. I think we had 3 questions come in by phone or email. I responded to those, And so at this point, we will move into staff evaluation. First of all, is there any question about the process? Or are we good to dive into? Okay. So our first application is appliances and more. This is 212 Greenwood Street. This is currently appliances and more. Building is formerly the True Value Hardware. This project is mostly storefront window exchange. There is also some energy efficiency work with additional insulation. It includes window and door replacements on 3 sides of the building, including Jefferson, the alley, and the parking lot facades. This particular application in front of you does not include the replacement of the Greenwood side storefronts. There is a separate application that has been submitted to the Landmarks Commission that is currently working through that process. That is not part of the application that's in front of you at the moment. The project does
Timothy,
meet.
just one second. The parking lot, you're talking about the Goss parking lot,
So,
the side of that, the building on
There's
that
a side
side.
parking lot that's between them and the Goss Automotive Shop and the alley. So it includes all 3 of those sides. Jefferson, the parking lot between them and the automotive,
Oh,
shop
on the other side.
and the alley
Okay,
frontage.
gotcha, okay.
So 3 of the 4 sides of the
Thank you.
building will be receiving improvements. So it includes those, and so it meets the key objective of restoring a historic resource while also supporting the continued growth of an existing retail business. This is a business that took over, purchased the building from True Value. They have been in there and continue to expand some product line. So the project will improve 3 sides of the corner building. The project will also reduce light by addressing some exterior damage that will be repaired or improved as part of the project. Most of the damage on this building is pretty minor, so there's no structural damage that we're aware of being replaced or repaired. So it didn't score as highly on blight, but there were some blight points awarded. It is important to note this building is listed as an historic contributing building in the downtown LaGrande National Register Historic District, and so being a historic resource is important, and it's important to note that all exterior work on the building will need to comply with the Landmarks design review standards. So, any specific questions on this project, or should we move on to the next one?
I'm just curious, have they applied for the facade grant program? Do you know?
They have not.
Okay. Are they allowed, would they be eligible to if they? work on
They
it, or
would
is
not be allowed, I believe the policy says that they cannot do that within, I don't know what the policy says.
2 years?
I know that
Yeah,
you can't do a facade grant within 12 months
12 months.
of a,
Okay,
yeah, you can't call for projects within 12 months of a facade grant.
okay.
I don't believe it is clear in the policy that they would be able to do the other.
Okay.
I will make a note to
I don't think-
track that answer down. Other questions, or shall we, okay, moving on to the Conklin Property Investments. So this is the former EONI building. This particular building, renovation and adaptive reuse of the former EONI building. This includes new office space, Nate Conklin's State Farm Insurance office will be occupying the Chestnut Street frontage as their new office. This photograph in the slideshow is of the back parking lot side. That is a space that will be renovated to accommodate a food truck pod, and that wall, the garage bay facing the parking lot will be a tap house serving the food court or food truck pod. The middle section of the space is being designed as a shared use commercial kitchen with potential specialty retail space. This project will include installation of all new electric, plumbing, and HVAC systems. Conversion of the parking lot into a year-round food truck pod that will include site improvements for water, sewer hookups, conversion of the garage bay into the tap house and the commercial kitchen. I think, yeah, and then we'll have some exterior work on there as well, doing repair to the exterior and windows. Again, this particular project is also listed as a contributing building in the historic district, and so once again, all exterior improvements will have to meet the landmark design review standards. Any questions on the ONI building? Yes.
Yes, I do. Some of the, I'm just looking at the map, okay, of everything.
Yes, I'm fine.
I could not make out what some of these places are. I mean, are we gonna see anything that's a little clearer so we know kind of floor plan and kind of what it is? I used a magnifying glass, but I couldn't see. I mean, I couldn't read it. I got a lot of them, but there's a lot I did not get.
So,
Oh, I got all the toilets, yeah. I got the toilets in the offices, but like right next to the private garage space, there's a whole little section there. I can't figure out between that and the conference rooms and stuff. I was just wondering the layout.
let me see if I can find that in my,
Okay, I was just wondering, because I looked in our email too to see if there was in there so I could enlarge it.
so this was an 11 by 17 that was reduced for your packets.
Okay,
So let's see if my glasses are even good enough to read that.
yeah. Yeah, I got the barn, I got all that. It's just this.
So you have the tap house,
Mhm.
and then behind that you have the actual kitchen space for the tap house.
Yep,
The middle space here is the conference room. There's a commercial kitchen in this back space,
yeah, I got that, the barn grill.
right? And there's public restrooms.
Got that.
And then this center space, he's looking at potentially this being small artisan vendor retail space.
Vendors, okay.
So this could be artisan
So
maker
even this
space.
bigger one that's right back here as well?
So that's actually the commercial kitchen space, the shared use,
Oh, okay.
commercial kitchen
I think
space.
this is
Shared
Jefferson.
use. Okay, good. Okay, and this is for vendors. Okay. And even this bigger place as well for vendors?
So that space, in my plan, that looks like that's a conference space.
Oh, okay, so a bigger conference room
So a
than the
little
other
conference
two.
room.
The other three, okay. All right. Thank you very much. Excellent.
I'm just
Yes.
curious, in the business plan conversation, do you know if they've identified kind of a vendor who will be managing the tap house, or is that one of those elements kind of still to be determined?
That is still to be determined.
Okay.
So I know that the Main Street EV Committee is working on identifying potential food truck vendors as contacts. I think Nate's got his own concept, but doesn't have a vendor or manager in mind yet for the tap house. And we're working with him in-house on some of the concept and build-out around the commercial kitchen as part of our work with some of the existing food entrepreneurs that we've been working with on that as a identified issue.
Awesome. Thank you.
Do you think he'll be able to fill it?
I am optimistic, yes. Okay, other questions? Okay. So we'll move on to preseason play, Cables Lighting. Go back. So this is the Blue Mountain Auto Parts Store, formerly. This particular building is being renovated. The application you have in front of you at this point is really for a lot of the exterior envelope work. This project includes adaptive reuse of the former Napa Auto Parts Store, converted to a winery. In this element, we're talking predominantly around the tasting room, which is the Jefferson front edge chestnut core. For this particular project, we're talking, the bids include replacement of the roof and asbestos abatement associated with that, as well as some of the window glazing. ADA improvements, including public restrooms, fire alarm system, exterior paint and signage, and Jefferson side storefront conversion into the tasting room. So long-term, the hope is and the plan is that the back half of the space will become the operational winery. But at this point, with the added cost of roof replacement, asbestos abatement, that is the scope of the project at this point. So are there questions on the Cables Winery project? Okay, then we will move to the preseason playground. This is 712 18th Street. It's on the corner of Adams and 18th. So as you look at this on the map, this will be creating, this is really the new entrance to the preseason playground coming off of 18th Street. Hence the address. There is work that has already taken place on this particular location. There's a new coffee house, a drive-through coffee shop. That is a separate project that is not part of this application or this project. And the interior work that's been done as tenant improvements on the preseason playground is not included here in this application, with the exception of the fire sprinkler system. The project is the adaptive reuse of this 1980s building. Most recently, self-service furniture store. The building will become an indoor sports and fitness center with space for indoor sports such as pickleball, has a small climbing wall, and will serve as sort of a training preseason facility for a number of athletics and sports. The project particularly includes a wide variety of site improvements, including repaving and creation of 24 additional parking spaces in the parking lot, repairing the roof, removal and replacement of the stone facade that's on the front of the building, including some pretty extensive water damage and structural damage as a result of water intrusion, exterior paint and gutters, and then fire sprinklers installation within the building. Are there questions about this particular project?
I have another question.
Yes.
Okay, so I kind of did all these notes because I thought it was last week. That's my fault.
So you're really prepared?
Sort of. Okay, so the storage, and I could be wrong, I think I read in there that it was supposed to be EOU storage. And why?
So EOU has some excess sporting equipment that they'll store there, and I think part of that is off-season training. So I don't know much. My engagement with the project has been with the property owner and the exterior engagement. I've not had a lot of engagement with the actual tenant, so those negotiations would be between the tenant and whether they're subleasing space to EOU. It sounds like EOU is sharing some use of the space.
Okay. All right. Oh, and I got area 3, area 2. What is in area 1?
I will take a look here and.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
It says skill development.
Is this, because I know area 3 is speed training, and then the area 2 is group class development, but I don't know what area 1 is.
They currently have pickleball courts and things outlined in there. There's
In
discussion
area
about
1?
Foosball. I don't know about area 1 in particular, but they've made a lot of interior improvements. It's outlined. They've been doing pickleball and things in there.
They have
like
the,
soccer goals, like indoor soccer or,
Didn't have preseason.
The kids rec had
Yeah.
practice in there too. I
I
thought
know
that was
people
really
who
cool.
put
Yeah.
down
Yeah.
the soccer.
In what area?
And
I don't
area
know.
1 and 2 have a temporary divider.
Yeah.
Those two spaces can actually be co-joined.
Okay.
One of them right now is currently pickleball courts.
And which one is pickle?
The area, I believe would be area 1 farthest to the
Oh,
south.
okay, that's the one, okay, good.
So, but these can be reconfigured for indoor soccer,
Right.
Anything
a
is fit.
variety of indoor team sports,
Great asset.
badminton, pickleball. So it really is a flexible space depending on what sport folks are training for.
So will it complement the field house at the college in some ways? I mean-
Fieldhouse is not very accessible to community members.
Oh, I thought it was. I mean, I've heard people who
Not
go.
very.
Oh, not
It's,
very.
it's used by classes and it's used by EOU sports. You have to go through a lot to get access to that space.
And
it's
limited
not
hours
easy.
based
Very
upon.
limited.
I-
Very
I've heard
limited
that too,
hours.
but I've also heard people who say they go there quite often, so.
They've
I
had
haven't-
some walking and
Okay.
clubs and run by
Okay.
EOU faculty.
Oh, okay.
So I've had people try, I've had friends try, and it was such an onerous
Hassle.
process
Okay.
that they gave
But
up.
wasn't it supposed to be open to the public?
Public is supposed to have access to it, and they do, but it's really limited, like tracks there at one
Okay.
time, and so,
How about we stick to our
Yeah.
one we're discussing now versus
yeah.
the
So,
EOU?
but the point is that
Right.
it's not as, EOU's not as
Okay.
accessible
As this will
as you
be.
thought, or as we thought, so.
This would be a great asset for the community.
Any other questions on the preseason playground? Okay, we'll move on. This is the Quilt Barn. This is actually at 1708 Jefferson. So it's on Jefferson on the other side of Highland Avenue. If you're looking at this picture
Yeah.
to the right, you would be like in the parking lot coming out right behind Papa Murphy's Pizza.
That's what I thought.
So it's
Okay.
kind of tucked in on that backside of Jefferson. So this is a complete conversion. This is a currently vacant storage shed. The Quilt Barn is an existing local online-only business. So this is a conversion that would create bricks and mortar storefront for that currently online-only business. The complete conversion, they'll remove the garage doors, create complete new retail storefront with awning and windows. They'll install complete new HVAC and electrical and plumbing systems. Site improvements include water, sewer, and utilities to the building. They'll frame and insulate and build out the interior retail space, and including ADA access improvements to the entry and restrooms. So, pretty straightforward. It's one of our smaller projects, but I think probably kind of a pretty majorly transformative project for that space. So, are there questions on the Quilt Barn project?
Timothy, can I have a clarification, because on this document you have maximum eligibility, 35,814, but on the first page of your staff report, eligible cost at 71,628. There's a discrepancy, and I know there's something in there that I'm not picking up on.
Last sentence.
And I have one question to that.
So I think, so the 3581 is the, let me go back to my staff report.
Yeah, because that one is, does say grant requested 75. As it is in there.
I think it's identified in that last paragraph on page 1 of the application. The total project cost of the, is 105,378, of which, so it says, therefore, the total eligible cost for the project is 71,628, and half of that is 35,814.
Maximum eligibility is 35. I don't know what,
So
how,
I
that's
see
the
what you're
maximum
saying.
eligible grant.
Funding amount, maximum.
So that's the funding amount would be a maximum of 35. The funds that would
Gotcha.
be eligible for,
with things deducted that aren't, okay,
Yeah.
part of the card, okay.
because interior tenant improvements would not be part of that. So we would cover the external storefront, the HVAC, the electrical, but the actual interior tenant space build out. So floor coverings, wall coverings, those places would not be
Number in the memo.
My math doesn't jive, that's why I'm asking.
eligible. You would be correct.
I think you need to tell them that's the
Well,
Robert is
Matt's
correct.
doing that
There
right
has
now.
been an error.
Doesn't address parking spaces.
I don't see that. I don't see anything about parking.
I don't call it.
The building is in the parking exempt zone. It is not required to have additional parking.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
What?
Where we parking?
Yeah.
So this particular address is in the parking exempt zone, so it is not required to have off-street parking.
It's just kind of tucked way back in there.
Right.
Yeah, the easiest way to get to it is he goes into the parking lot of Copies Club
Yeah, you go
and
around,
around the corner
Yeah.
and go out the backside. That's where it is. I know you can come into it from the other street too, but that's what I've gone into Copies Club and then turned around and go
Either
out.
drive-through
Yeah.
park.
Yeah, the drive-through.
Well,
Turn right.
even on the other side, you can go through
Yeah, you
both
know,
sides of the building.
Yeah,
go
you
through,
can.
yeah.
It'd be hard to know that it's there.
yeah, it's very hard to know it's there. Because I
Yeah.
had to really think about where that would be and then go look at it and think, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
The idea here is this is more a conversion of existing type of space into retail, is that correct?
Correct. This is currently a vacant storage shed, basically, that will be converted into active retail space.
I wish him well,
Any other questions? We'll move on to our final project. This one is our new construction. You are looking at the vacant and overgrown lot on the corner of Adams Avenue, right behind the Greenwell Motel. This particular project is proposed for redevelopment. Will be new construction. The project will include a 2-story residential unit project with 5 vacation rentals on the ground floor and a total of 9 long-term residential units, 7 on the second floor, 2 on the bottom floors. This is the first property in the urban renewal district if you come in from the north end of town. It is zoned commercial, which allows for 20% of the ground floor to be used as residential. And under the current zoning, vacation rental is an allowed outright use under the commercial zoning. So, so it's a hybrid project for long-term residential with 5 units of short-term vacation rental. The project includes complete site development, including all infrastructure and project build-out. So that's water, sewer, electric, all utilities to the site, plus new construction of the entire unit. So are there questions about this project?
What was the theory for 5 short-term rentals versus permanent housing, do you know? Just available square footage, and that's the way they could divide it
Is it
up?
commercial?
Because the property is zoned commercial, the zoning currently allows for 20% of the ground floor space to be
So
residential.
20% of full-time residency, and therefore the short-term rentals,
Is it
that's
Short-term
how,
rental
that's how they're getting under the wire.
qualifies as commercial use on the ground floor.
Gotcha.
And
That's
no
what I thought you
specifications
were
for the second
talking
floor?
about.
And the second floor is all long-term residential.
But there's no specifications in, with it being zoned commercial.
So we can have,
It meets.
so that commercial can have mixed use with second floor residential throughout the commercial zone.
It's
So
kind of
there's no
like,
limitations on residential on the second floor.
so is it kind of like then having, you have to have a commercial business downstairs?
Correct.
That-
And
that's
so it's
That's
in
the
current zoning
Airbnb.
code.
That's the,
Yeah,
yes, that's what it is.
I wanted clarification on that, because that's what I was reading.
So
Yep.
could they flip it after the fact and make
No.
it all Airbnb?
Not without coming before the
All
planning.
Airbnb? Yes,
That- So they could
because
change that.
that's a permissible use, the question, because it's
Oh, you mean the
commercially zoned.
entire ground level?
They could
They
change
would
the
have to
whole project
rezone
to
it.
Airbnb if they wanted to.
They would have to rezone it if they wanted it to be full-term, long-term residential. They could flip it to be all Airbnb. However, I would anticipate that if funded through urban renewal dollars, where they did receive extra points in the scoring matrix for additional residential, that we would probably include a 5-year moratorium on any transition of those 2 uses.
Because currently we're short on permanent housing.
Correct.
And I'd hate for that to get flipped on us when that is where
I-
we gave points in that.
I can't quote verbatim, but I know that's one of the issues we addressed with the planning and when we had the moratorium on the Airbnbs. So I think it would have to be a variance, or they'd have to come before planning. They can't just decide, done deal. Another question. Apparently, the entrance and the exit all come on to Adams Avenue. Is there any kind of exit out the back, or is that usage for the housing only behind it?
I do not have the answer to that question.
Okay.
I would stipulate that,
But see the road right here? I
That's
think
a
that's
parking lot.
private.
That's their
That's
parking lot.
So that's private.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah,
I don't know if Roxy's getting the same concern I had, but that's a little bit of a blind corner. And so, if you look at their layout, I mean, I do think that, they've got 14 parking spots planned in their plan. I didn't count the number of units, but they've got 14 units, I think.
They do.
That's 1 parking spot per unit. When you're talking Airbnbs, I don't know that that's always realistic.
Correct.
It may be within regulations, but it may not always be realistic. And on, somebody tried to park into the street there, I don't know that they could, but that would be disastrous.
They couldn't, I don't
It's
think.
a terrible
I
corner.
don't think you can, because it's, like you said, blind corner.
I think that would almost merit some discussion about, what do you do with the speed limit around there and that kind of thing, because it's 35 right there.
Yeah, in visiting with planning, we're fairly certain that ODOT will weigh in on the traffic impact there and probably, and may likely have some further revisions to egress and access coming out there. So what we have before us is the plan that they have submitted that has not been through ODOT approval and review yet. So it's likely that we would see some revisions based on some of your exact concerns.
So how does that work if we choose to fund this tonight? Is that funding then contingent upon them getting things cleared through ODOT and that looking satisfactory, or how does that work?
So all funding that's approved through call for projects as part of the grant agreement, there is a stipulation that all projects have to comply with all city and other code requirements. So if ODOT says you can't have that be your primary exit, you've got to move to here, or we have to find a way to have a secondary exit, they would have to comply with that as part of the compliance.
Right.
So I have another Airbnb question. Didn't we pass a rule that you could only have two? And there's
Five,
There's
7?
5. There's 5.
So does this?
5 on the ground floor, 2 permanent.
follow-
I'm not positive, but I think that there are some provisions to talk about in residential zones.
I don't
Yeah.
remember. But that would be my other question, is following the rulings that we've
Yeah,
made?
it's a commercial zone and a commercial use, and I think we can research it, but one of the,
Okay.
I think, clear, bright line, important elements that goes to Dave's question as well, all land use and permitting has to be complied with. So the decision by the agency and the EUR Act to provide funding does not guarantee that they will be permitted for the use. To back up a little bit as well, a comment was made about could they flip the use to remove residential. I think if there's concern about that, what the group could do would be to place a specific restriction on this property because of the added points for the residential, that if there is a change of use within 5 years, that the funding become due and payable. So that would be a separate motion that would need to be made in advance of approving funding once we kind of see where we are. So when we get to the point where we have all of these ranked, we'll have that conversation about whether or not the intent would be to include as part of an agreement for this funding that restriction because of the desire for the agency and the city to see more residential, long-term residential housing. And there are points awarded specifically for that purpose.
Is the observer building zone commercial, Robert?
Yes.
Because there's a limit on the number of Airbnbs they can have.
Those are apartments.
No, he has some Airbnbs as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know the specific configuration. He was permitted prior to the change in the zoning code anyway.
Okay.
Which building is it?
So is there a reason why we don't have that part of our project, is that they have to have all those things taken care of to answer those kind of questions, like, can they do this even with ODOT? They should have that approval done prior to them coming to us.
If they are unable to get the permits, they don't get the money.
I know, but if we knew they had the permits, then we wouldn't have to do all
The
this discussion.
practicality of requiring someone to go through the entire permitting process in advance of our funding cycle would be untenable.
And some of the projects hinge upon funding from
This
us.
is not your 100, 200,000, this is a $2.2 million project.
Yeah, I know
I
it
think
is.
it's a huge project.
I know it is. That's why I would think that
It's
they
a
would
great
want to make
project.
sure that they,
But they will have to come into compliance in order for the project to be approved.
And Timothy.
I'm
oh,
not worried
sorry.
about whether or not they'll be able to satisfy ODOT's ingress and egress requirements.
Okay.
They'll figure that out.
they might
There's
have
no
to do this.
business plan attached to this application, correct? It's in my notes,
Correct.
and
So-
it's a new venture for
It
them,
is a new venture for them.
okay?
They have been in business
And it's not
in the
ADA
contract business.
either. It's not ADA, for at least upstairs isn't. There's no, I mean, there's no way somebody could get up there unless you could walk up the stairs.
They probably reserved the first 4 units for those.
There's only 2 units on the first floor though.
Right, yeah.
So,
And several of these are 2 bedrooms, so
Yeah.
one parking space is, they're gonna be on-street parking, so.
there isn't, but there's no street parking. There's no place they can park on the
All the
street.
trucks are lined up too.
They can't park on that. They can't.
That's,
It's red?
There's no room for parking.
You can't do it. You can't,
Yeah.
literally can't park a car there without giving away.
no.
You can't, yeah.
No,
I don't think it's posted, but they're just, you'd be
Mine.
but there's
blocking
no
part
curb
of it.
even. I mean, it's just right there,
Yeah.
the dirt. I mean, it's,
Try to
it's,
turn at Foley too, there's no, I
yeah.
don't think there's a turn lane to go at Foley.
I mean, it's a nice place to have it. I mean, that's blighted for sure.
Sure.
Right.
But, yeah,
Maybe too big for that space.
But that's a state, Adams is a state highway, so I mean, it's out of our reach,
Right.
is my
Yeah,
perspective on this. I mean,
Right.
we
Yeah,
can
didn't-
talk about it, but it's ultimately not our decision to make anyway. The state's gonna have to
Right.
approve that.
Yeah, the conversation about is it ADA accessible, egress, ingress, that is completely outside the scope of this meeting.
well, I know,
But
but,
it's still consideration when I
Yeah,
looked at
consideration.
funding a project.
Right.
You know, that corner, I think it would be a great project, don't get me wrong. But I also know that bleed over parking will be in front of residential, since not anybody is going to want to park on a blind corner. So the only thing we can do is look at the project itself. All this other has to be clarified and taken care of outside of it.
but it's also our responsibility to make sure that it is a project that can work and is safely work.
Absolutely, and I'm
So-
more concerned about the business plan right now than I am parking.
I know, but that, all that has to take, you know, I don't, anyway.
Wasn't a business plan a requirement?
Business plan was a requirement.
So how did this qualify without a business plan?
So they included, they did not include a business plan.
They should have been disqualified, right?
That was one of the pieces that they did not do.
Because I remember a discussion previously where we required business plans to be part of this for that purpose, is that we wanted to have some sense of the viability of the project, right?
Right.
Policy change was to remove the points associated with the business plan
Well, that's true.
and to take those points and put them into the discretionary piece. There's not a reject for no business plan,
Okay.
and it was part of the qualitative, you know, you have a great business
I thought
plan,
so.
you've kind of done this, what's a 5-point business plan versus a 3-point business plan? And the agency and the URAC conversation was, let's just say, here's stuff that goes into viability for kind of assessment. And whether you have that or not is part of your, as the voting members on the funding decision to say, do I want to dock them X number of points because they had no business plan? Or it was, I think,
There's a
5 out of 25
discretionary.
points, you know, business plan, there were like a number of things, and we put all of those points in the discretionary piece.
So I misunderstood then. It was not a requirement that there was a business plan. It was merely that there were points that were previously assigned specifically to
Yeah,
that.
I think that's the way the language was.
Except it does say, please ensure the following items are included. And the business plan is in here.
It may not be scored, but yeah.
Well, and I think part of the rationale in that change is we have, for instance, going back to the preseason playground, we have the developer doing a project, but we have a business plan for the tenants. In this particular case, we have no business plan. We have an existing contractor doing the work,
New construction.
but it's, there's no business plan for how the operation will work.
See,
other
that would
than-
answer questions such as, will there be an on-site manager who's going to manage it? Right now, we're just looking at the building, and that's what we've got to run with.
Yeah, anytime we can add long-term housing, I think we need to take that
Well, we do.
seriously.
I
So-
agree, it's just,
Is there support for any type of requirement on the usage of the long-term housing component on requiring restriction that it not be flipped to short-term rentals for 5 years?
yeah, that's what Robert was saying.
Yeah, Robert was
Well,
saying
that's an
that.
option, but we have to make a motion to that end.
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah,
not-
because there's not a
No.
provision in the policy that addresses, go back, I'm done, sort of done talking. We have a provision in the policy that if there's a change of use that impacts the property tax revenues, that it immediately become due and payable. There's not a separate provision that talks about a change of use to something else. And we've talked about that over the years, and the decision was the improvements are to the building so another business could fall in and use those same improvements that we're paying for. In this particular instance, given the fact that we are awarding points specifically for encouraging residential use as an organization, you could make that a provision as a requirement. This is what you were selling to us. It's important enough to us that we make this a requirement. And then the applicant can make the decision whether or not to accept that condition as part of accepting the funding.
So is a motion appropriate at this time?
It is not.
or-
Because
No?
we haven't gone through and finished all of the scoring and all of the presentation on all the projects in your conversation.
Okay,
Once we do that, where we see where it is in relation to the funding cut line, that would be
Then
the
we'll do it.
appropriate time to do it, because I think it would be premature, because no funding decisions have been presented.
perfect.
I have a question on the discretionary scoring. Do we get 65 points total? Could I give?
No,
every-
65 per project.
So I
Up to
could give them
up to-
all 0 or all 65
Or
or
anything in
something
between.
Or anything in
Okay,
between.
Yes.
That's what I want to know.
I have a silly question, but I'm gonna say it anyway. In terms of all, like, kind of looking at the projects as a whole, when we think about like the ROI, or like in terms of like what you were saying, Robert, about like the taxes back,
Mhm.
is that something that, like, I don't know, I guess I'm just like thinking about, right, like in looking at the scoring or when we look at the ROI, like, how would those rank, based on different projects? And is that something you can,
It's all quantified.
okay,
So so I was looking for something, the requirements, the submittal requirements do not say you are required to submit a business plan in the policy. So, private investment to public dollars, this is one of the areas that we get into what you're addressing. Where you get up to 30 points. So if your project is over $150,000 of private investment, you would get that full 30. If you then look at the return on investment, this is the total project cost, which is what we're hoping is driving the increase in value for the property. And so not only is the private investment dollars included in here, any agency dollars that would be provided here, or any other public dollars that could be part of a project that would not count as private investment would also go into here. So when we look back to The Bone Camp building, as an example, had $200,000 of Oregon Main Street money in it. Those $200,000 did not count towards the private
Okay.
investment piece. So yeah, we take into account both of those elements.
Yes, now I see return on investment, right there. Heading. Thanks, Rhonda.
You're welcome.
I do that all the time.
Question on this one.
Yes.
I guess it'd probably be more towards Timothy because it's his scoring. Why did they get 0 on blight when we have a bare piece of property that's overgrown with no building on it? Would that be
Because the-
considered as blight?
The policy specifically states that we cannot use bare undeveloped land as a definition of blight.
But also being the entrance of Grande, we would have rather have something nice there versus just an open,
Absolutely.
I mean, that would, in my eyes, that's blight, but.
Well, it is blight.
So
Oh,
I
good
think
Lord, let's
that
not go there
certainly
again.
can in your application of discretionary
Probably take some of their
points.
parking.
I just want to make that.
But under the policy specifically states we can't
You know what I'm saying? They
Yeah, I
can-
know exactly what you're
Yeah,
saying.
access it, or what they call it.
Thank you.
And that's because the agency took grief about awarding blight points
It is
for
wellness,
vacant
I know, but that's
property.
what- oh, no, the possibility.
I don't have a policy that pushes that one, but.
Okay.
What was the square footage of the long-term units? Did we have that calculated?
I
They're
don't know,
two
it was
bedrooms.
Two
Yeah,
bedrooms
two
in the
bedrooms.
living room and
And one guy.
I don't think it gave dimensions, Dave. I didn't see any, or I couldn't read them.
I think you're talking potentially 9 long-term units for a city investment of 75,000. I think that's something that we need to pay some attention
Oh,
to.
absolutely.
Private investment to city
Right.
investment is very low compared to the other ones.
Right.
I think if you look at
Right.
these,
It looks like they're roughly 33 feet by 30 feet. So what is that?
Okay.
I can't see it closely enough, but the site plan does show the size.
Yeah,
I
and
can
can't
see
read
it, I couldn't,
Yeah,
it's
my-
pretty small, I
It is.
I
can't.
think it's 33 by 30.
Okay.
So that's what,
If only you knew an optometrist.
What I have a hard time seeing,
Zinga.
I'm in trouble. Anybody know a guy?
so that's 900 square feet.
Yeah.
Well, there, we can use
or
our,
90, almost
you know.
1,000.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
shy of
The
1,000.
two-bedroom apartment?
You know, if it's 30 by 33,
small.
yeah.
Yeah.
But close to 1,000.
Yeah.
That's,
For two bedrooms? That's-
yeah.
Two bedrooms, one
My
bath.
only desire for
Starter
a business plan would be that often that would include an idea of what they plan to charge in rent,
Oh.
which I think, would be nice to know, but we don't have it.
They probably have to build it to know how much they need to recoup.
That's where a plan comes in.
Yeah.
Calculate, count your chickens and your eggs, and
Yeah,
say,
right.
where do I have to circle back for my return on investment?
Did these have, I'm having trouble reading this too, laundry facilities in them?
Yes, they do, because I went
Okay.
through that. And they're in the kitchen.
Ah, okay.
Because I made that same note.
Yeah,
and then
utility.
I called my husband over and I was like,
Yeah.
help me find it.
Yeah.
Let's see.
It's,
I still have a bigger one, but.
it's on this side. the
Yep, I see
utilities
it.
right
I see the
there. Yeah.
legend, okay.
I saw it too, but now I can't see it because I don't have my glasses.
The one that has the two
I have my
pages,
old ones on,
It's
so,
in the kitchen,
Yeah.
and it says utility with the, like the W and D.
Yeah,
yeah.
washer dryer.
Phase Electric's gonna be doing this, I think they'll know.
Yeah, they know.
But no, like if it had one included, because when I first looked at it, I didn't see that there was laundry facilities, and then I was like, well, is there one on site?
Any more
They could
questions?
go to the green
about
web.
this one? So our next step of our process, Robert?
Yeah, so now is the fun part. Is there any conversation that you would like to have before you do your individual scoring of the projects? And if not, then we would adjourn to break. You would complete your scoring sheet, give it to me, I will do some math. When the math is done, we will reconvene.
Perfect.
I have one question, I'm sorry. So, I mean, you, like, what if you feel really strongly about two of them, you can't give 65 each of them? You have
You
to-
absolutely can.
Yeah, you
Oh, I
can-
can?
You have 65 points, yeah, thank you for asking.
Okay,
You have 65 points per project.
Yeah.
okay.
You said
And we're
that.
about 68,000 in the ask versus the budget, correct? Budget is 350, ask is
Or
418.
something. Yeah, I've got to go back and fix that
410
one.
now with the correction.
Fix my math.
Yeah, I've got to
410
fix that
correction.
number.
Okay.
Okay.
So 60,000 differential.
So you could give them all 65, or
Right,
you can give
right,
them all
right.
0, or
You
whatever.
may not.
Yeah.
Oh, points, yes. I thought you were talking about
Oh.
money.
You may not. I remember that
Nice try.
discussion too. I've been around too long.
Been there, done that.
All right, so if everybody wants to fill out your sheet, we are in recess. What do you think, Robert?
Okay, so they're saying.
10 minutes?
Let me get my cheat sheet.
righty,
from work.
let's get back into it. Looks like everybody got their sheets turned in, and we're ready to proceed.
There's no puddles.
So make sure your microphones are on, and
We don't have a
we'll get this done.
Not
Oh,
this.
yours on the table, sorry.
Okay, so just as a reminder of a couple things, the way that the policy was reconfigured a couple years ago, the intent is to fully fund the top project first and to continue down until you run out of the dollars. That doesn't mean that the agency could not say, and the URAC couldn't say, we don't want to fund that project at all for whatever reason. You have the discretion to do that, but I think it would have to be a pretty significant reason tied to it. There was a fair amount of conversation about, for the project with the residential housing, should that include a requirement that the residential housing be maintained for a minimum of 5 years? So once I show this, you'll see kind of where the relative ranking is. Then I think that would be the appropriate time to have the conversation about whether or not you want to impose that as a condition of funding approval. So with that, let's see if I can crawl this thing over to where it goes. There it is. Okay, can you read that?
The play season only got ranked 4th? Wow.
Wow, okay, I gotta look at this.
Yeah, I know, I do too.
Third with
So
points.
the cut
No,
line
it
was
was
in the middle of
fourth with
appliances and more.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And so you can kind of see in the column under the blue, this is the average of the agency and URAC scores, staff scoring, total. And so
The comp on this number.
3 of the projects were awfully close in scoring.
Was 1,
Yeah, they were.
winery was 2.
So if you're going to fund in the order preceded, I don't know what color column this is, this would be the funding amounts.
Robert, can you remind us if, the new development, if they don't get all the things they needed, what happens with that 75,000?
It rolls back into the agency. We eliminated the provision that we would award partial and then give that, we actually had that happen once where 3 years down the road, someone finally couldn't do something, so they gave the money back. So we went back in and pro rata allocated it, but that was an extremely complex
Right,
thing
okay.
that nobody understood, even me, and I was the one that created it. So essentially, if someone does not complete a project or doesn't use all of the funding, those dollars just stay in the agency and can be used for future years.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
In this fund, they stay in this fund.
They stay in the agency and then we reallocate. So in some years, we will have, say, $40,000 that was not used and called for projects. So my intent is just to roll that into next year and reduce the new money requirement to bring us back to the 350.
So we don't have to fund as much the next year if the,
Yes.
gotcha, okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
But it stays in this particular fund.
that's the way that I,
Doesn't go
that's,
somewhere
that's the way I
else.
propose the budget, is if dollars aren't
Hopefully
allocated
fund
for
it.
call for projects, they're included as
You do the
Yeah.
top 5.
carried over
And then we'll get
money
something to the
plus new money to give us the 350.
with this.
I think in budgeting, the intent is for that amount of money to go to call for projects, and I don't think we should pull it and put it to something else, and that's not what we're doing, so I'm happy.
We do not, I think one time we moved money to increase the facade program during a fiscal year from another area. But the intent would be if a project here end up not using all of those dollars or doesn't get it, this is what you got. And the dollars just stay in the agency. We would not go in then and reallocate it to appliances and more, and potentially the quilt barn.
That's a question.
Of course.
Okay, I probably heard it wrong. Okay, so we will do number one first, the comp, and then we give that to them first, and then we wait and then do
No, no,
number
no, no,
two,
no.
or?
They're all funded
Oh,
simultaneously.
Well,
Oh,
it
okay.
depends on how
Yeah.
we structure our motion.
Yeah, the way that this is set up
Okay.
is if you approve the funding as presented, then those 5 businesses, 5 applicants are told, you have approved 75,000, or in one case, $50,000 of funding. That's the most you're gonna get.
All right.
And it's, you have to have 50-50 match, so they have to spend at least that amount of money. They have to complete the project essentially as they have presented it. And then they're also required to get all of the building permits and everything else. You know, a couple of years ago, we had some businesses, some applicants that did not get building permits on certain things, and they did work without those permits. And then we had a conversation with them and reduced their award to offset, because some of the time, it is not the applicant's fault that their
Very middle total.
contractor didn't go get the permits that they were required to. And so we've really reinforced and made it very clear in the policy and emphasize it.
Okay.
From now on, if you don't get the permit and you do the work, that's all ineligible funding.
The winery, and that's number
Excellent.
2, and then 176 is
You're welcome. So before we do the funding things, is it the desire to include a condition for the 301 Adams?
301 Adams.
301 Adams, that the residential, long-term residential dwelling units be maintained as those for a minimum of 5 years as a condition of the funding?
Yes.
Could we do 10?
I would suggest we only do 5 because the policy requires for everything else 5 years
years.
where we have a clawback.
Businesses can be sold, that's kind of the standard.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
And-
so
and-
move.
And just so you know, if we do that, we will go in and make a policy modification for agency consideration to include that language for future calls for project.
Yeah. Yeah, this would be.
Because I think it's a good practice, given
It
the
is.
the housing situation we're in.
I'd be, just put me down as a no, I'd be against that.
The condition?
Yeah.
We don't have a second yet.
Oh, sorry. Well,
Oh,
during discussion,
I
I'll-
probably
Yeah.
need to read it to you,
So
correct?
as I understand, the motion was to include a condition of approval for the 301 Adams Avenue funding, that the identified residential dwelling units be retained as long-term residential for 5
5 years.
years, or the grant funding converts to a loan which needs to be immediately repaid.
Correct,
With interest?
And so you
No.
need a second for sure.
no,
So go ahead and second it.
I'll second it.
Okay, there you
I made the motion, though, how can I second my
Well,
own motion?
You cannot.
You did.
I will
Oh,
second it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay. And now you would call for discussion.
You can do everything.
So the reason why you're trying to put this on is because they receive points for having residential housing?
Correct.
Is that why you're trying to enforce?
correct, because if our rubrics, our scoring rubrics, that's part of it, and then they change what they presented to us, then I don't feel that it was a fair contest for the rest of the applicants. Whatever you present to us is what we're looking at and what we approve.
So to be fair, I was looking at the points as they were allocated there. I don't see, because
There are
they
no
didn't get
points.
the upper floor, they got a 0 for upper floor residential.
That's because they're not in the central.
Because they're not in the
Right.
central.
Okay.
So then why are we
where-
putting-
Where else were the points allocated for residential? That wasn't evident to me.
No, in the policy, we do give point preference for residential within the central business district.
And a retail
And this is
below,
not-
I believe.
This
Yeah.
is in the general commercial, but it is not in central business.
So if we're not giving points for them, then why are we restricting them?
Yeah.
Well,
I
if
guess
it
that's my
were
question.
all
That's a good
Airbnbs, I
question,
might
but-
not be in favor of it, because maybe residential.
Well, and
I understand that, but why are you restricting a business that doesn't get any points or any favors for the residential that he's putting in?
That's true.
He's actually being docked more because where he's at versus being downtown.
Right.
if the goal of many of the commissions and committees I've sat on is long-term housing, then one of my overviews is how do we maintain long-term housing? We know that we are, and if Michael was here, he could quote, we are below the amount of housing we need in LeGrand.
Yeah, but to restrict a business putting $2.2 million
But we
into a
would-
project versus a project's only 270, and all they're asking for is $75,000.
Correct, but in every other business, I'll cite the Bonenkamp, one of the conditions, and they were not funded when they came before the agency, they offered the 5-year, we'll keep it long-term. So it's kind of the standard. And my feelings are if we do it here, then we're going to have to do it for other people.
My only
The urban renewal district is not primarily where I would look at long-term housing.
No, but it's
But-
part of the big picture, Matt.
Yeah, but our organization is looking at this district. And we want to put houses on top of buildings and stuff, wonderful. But the way I'm looking at it, this gentleman wants to put a 14-unit hotel in at that side of town. Fantastic, we could use some on that side. That's why I'm looking at it. Airbnb has become like the bad 4-letter word for housing. This is just a glorified hotel.
That's right.
And so I
I
think
see your point,
that's
but
why I will be a definite no on this.
Right, and I
I
think,
understand what you're saying. That does
Yeah.
make sense.
Thank you.
along with what
I
Matt's
tried
saying,
to be intelligent.
I would ask myself the question, would I still fund this if their whole intent was just to put Airbnb in? And my short answer is yes, because we need more short-term housing as well as long-term housing. And so with regard to that, I think, Matt, you and I probably share the same thoughts
Yeah,
on that.
well, if you think
I
about
would
it,
still fund this even if it was
because
just
if it
all
was going to be a hotel, if they would have come in with the hotel, we would have said, yes, we need another hotel in town. And that's what it could be.
can a hotel apply for urban renewal dollars, Timothy?
Yeah, it would be a commercial use.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
commercial.
The landing's a great example.
The what?
The landing's a great example.
Ah, the boutique.
Probably one of our better example of use of urban renewal dollars to take
Right,
a
but they
blighted
also
drug
have a
house and
business
turn it
too,
into a
though.
little gym. Let me add a couple tidbits. There are no residential points, but you have discretionary points, and part of your discretionary points were allocated based on the residential there. So there is validity to, hey, we want the residential that you're proposing, and that's why we gave you the points. The math element to that is, for that to matter in this instance, the discretionary points, average discretionary points that would have to be awarded to 301 Adams for it to make a difference, instead of 56, would need to be 25. Maybe it's 15. 25. It's a 25-point swing to make a difference in the ranking to pull them out of the funding. And so if your sense is, I would have given them less than 25 points,
No, I wouldn't have,
then placing the requirement on because of the discretionary points that were allocated for the residential has merit.
though. Right.
It was ranked as our number one, as our group's number one.
Because if it would have come in as a hotel or totally, I would have ranked it high.
Yeah, Preseason Playground is ranked number 2 in our group, and
So-
then Bowles Winery number 3, Conklin number 4, and Appliances number 5, and Quilt Barn number 6. That's how our ranking went and our voting.
In our scoring.
I'm sorry, scoring.
Scoring,
I apologize. I didn't sound too intelligent on that one.
We knew what you meant. We knew what you meant.
So we have a motion and a second. I think the next is I'll call for the question and go by roll call vote, so we know which way we want to go.
Can I ask one more question, or, I guess,
You
just
can't,
thinking of, huh?
I'm sorry, you can't. He
Okay.
called for the question.
Okay. He called for the question?
He
Oh.
did.
I did. That means, the question means you got to vote.
Yeah.
Oh,
That means that we're done and we move
Cancel
on.
Discussion.
oh, okay.
Justin Rock,
No.
David Glade,
No.
Corinne Dudo,
Yes.
Molly King,
No.
Marianne Muser,
No.
Denise Wheeler,
No.
Elena Corollo,
Now I'm really confused on what we're voting on.
You're voting on whether to require a stipulation that they maintain the long-term.
The 5-year.
Okay.
For 5
housing
years.
5 years.
Oh,
Yeah.
gosh.
Think of the project as a hotel.
I know, yeah.
No coaching.
That's what it is, isn't it?
I, I'll say no.
Roxanne Ogilvy,
Yes.
Matt Scarfield.
Nope.
Motion fails.
So now would be an appropriate time to call for a vote on the funding
Even though
as
I'd like to
presented.
keep it 5, but
Well, then put the 5-year on it.
All right, so at this time,
there's no rationale.
let's see, make a motion that, I guess I'll do this. I move to approve the funding for the call for projects as presented.
I'll
Is there-
second.
Second? I think this one's pretty simple. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Thank you.
Okay.
I think it was a really good discussion about the residential and
You know,
housing
I mean, I
piece.
would like it to stay residential, but I can see the value either way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
The part, if we're going to not allow people to sell a business for 5 years if they receive funding, the part that hits me is, okay, you can't sell your business, but if you want to recharacterize what we funded you on, then that's okay.
It would be a complete shift away
Yeah.
from, we're approving a project to include the business that's occupying the space. And historically, it has been, we're approving the improvements to the building because that's what the value is based on that the agency receives their revenues from. So,
I do
But it's not cheap.
want to make a
You
comment
can't
that this
sell- You can't
process,
sell your
is-
your building, but you
I
can
like
sell your
it.
business.
It's very objective. It was pretty smooth
Right, because of the
compared
changes.
to,
That
8 years
changes.
ago when
Let
it
them
felt like
change.
we were
But
just
then what
throwing
goes through my mind
stuff against the wall to see if it
is
stuck.
here we
I
are
feel
again
like
with a bunch
it's,
of short-term rentals
is
and people.
a much better process,
in
and
the
I
new
feel
ones,
good
and
about
It's like a
allocating
hotel. I mean, I just
taxpayer
look at it
dollars
as a
in
hotel.
this way.
And we need more
There.
hotels.
Not in that
I do
location.
think that in the future.
First of all, hand.
Timothy,
I know, but that might.
any of the agency members would like to speak before I adjourn? Nope.
David had a comment.
I just would say in the
Yeah, we're still-
future, I would be in favor of requiring some amount of a business plan.
Yeah,
just
I would
think
too.
It's smart for us to look at the economic viability of these projects. That matters just as much as, you'd improve it, but if it's going vacant 2 years from now because the business isn't viable, because I think it's a good idea. I don't know if anyone else supports that. I'm always really disappointed when I see someone apply and they don't have a business plan for it.
I do, because it gives me a clearer picture of the viability, even though I may not get to score it. I can see more what their train of thought is and where they're going with it and how it's going to be successful.
And they've given it some thought of how they're
Yeah.
going to work it. Yes, I think it's important.
What about suggesting a business plan? If they choose not to, then we can use our discretionary funds to not support that.
That's the way it's currently structured.
That's what it is now.
Is if they don't have a good business plan, you can dock them, you could just not give them 65 points.
Yep.
Because technically, we are voting on the construction piece of it and the improvements to the building, which improves our tax base and the business. Some of these projects have gone through several businesses, but we still have improved tax rates on that building, so I think it's helpful.
And I think from a
Yeah.
staff perspective, the business plan makes sense if it's the tenant is also the applicant slash developer. That's who's applying for the money, that's who's, but if you have property owner who's just mom and pop property owner going to develop property, and you have one tenant or three tenants, whose business plan do you include with the application?
That's a good perspective, which is,
So-
some of these projects we may approve just because they're going to enhance a blighted building. There may not, they may be opening it up and making it so that applicants want to come in and use their commercial space. That's a good perspective. I wonder if maybe we couldn't word something in the discretionary points so that applicants understand that business plans are one of the things that we would seriously consider in the discretionary points. That may prompt some, the case discussed today is one where the builder is also the one, I think, that's planning to do that. So not relevant to the case discussed today, but I hear what you're saying, and that's a very good point.
That's a good idea,
So
though.
maybe there's somewhere in between where we can emphasize to them that discretionary points, attention will be paid to the viability of the business as demonstrated in a business plan.
The
A
more
good
information you
example-
have, the more likely they're willing to.
At the preseason playground, there was a business plan, there was, she compared other facilities in the
Right.
area, so
Yes,
you
she
could
did.
kind of get that vision and see that, yeah, this could fly.
But the developer
Um,
could do that too, saying this is what my plan is.
Yeah,
I mean, so the developer could
But I-
easily put one out.
you got more points from me because I said, okay, I can roll with this.
Get
Yeah,
behind that.
yeah,
Okay.
so,
Just some final thoughts as we think about the future. But, okay.
So expect sometime in the near future an email saying, if you have thoughts for policy revisions, shoot them to me. Do not wait for the email. If you think of things, just do that, and we'll do as we always do. We'll run those by the URAC, come in with a requested revision for the agency consideration prior to doing this again next year. I'm done.
We are adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.